Thank everyone for joining us today. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but we'll work through this. And I want to just thank Amani for being here to help us through this. We actually put together some slides as our introduction, and we'll take about the first 15, 20 minutes to introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about our educational background and what we do at this company called Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. And with that, and then we'll use the remaining time really to answer your questions. So since I'm projecting, I cannot see the chat. And so I will just ask my colleagues, if someone puts a question in the chat, please interrupt me or the person who has the question, and we will answer the question. So I know, Chi, you had a question about the slide. Are you okay?
I'm just not able to make it the larger screen to get out of the gallery view.
Do you want to ask Amani about this, or?
I mean, I can go ahead.
Can you repeat your question?
Just how to make the slide the main.
She has really bad eyes, so she can't see very well. So
double
she needs
tap
to have it
the
big.
screen that you're doing for the slides, and that'll maximize this.
Okay. All right. Why don't we jump in, and we'll start with Chi.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm hearing an echo, so just ask everyone else to mute. I don't know if it's me. Are you hearing an echo? Oh. Okay. I'm glad to be here and just introduce myself. I am Associate Director at Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. And if you go to the next slide, just wanted to share with everybody quickly just a little bit about me and how I came to be at Regeneron. So I'll start with
Chi, yes. You are breaking up a little. I don't know if you're near the mic or away from the mic, or.
It's right here.
Okay.
Can you hear me better now? I have a really bad echo. That's all.
Okay. I think it's because of the connection. Hold on. I'm muting everyone else for you, and then I'll mute you once. Okay. Would you like to try and speak again for me, Chi?
Better?
Slightly better, yeah. Continue, and then I'm going to keep troubleshooting while you're talking.
Okay. So I just wanted to start with the cornerstone of my academic progress being where I went to college, University of Maryland, Baltimore County in Baltimore, Maryland, otherwise known as UMBC. From there, I went on to get an MD, PhD at Duke University. If you click the next. So I kind of want to take you quickly on the journey of me there pictured in my last day, I think, of my surgical rotation in medical school. Going from there to, if you click, Regeneron's research program management team in Tarrytown, New York. Me pictured there now as a mother of an 8-year-old and budding scientist, and how I've been able to talk to and mentor multiple students along the way, like yourselves, and it's been a really important and critical component of my career. So if you click again, one of the key things I got out of doing an MD and a PhD was a sense of confidence. Obviously, when you do your PhD, you become an expert in whatever it is you are doing. And you learn to learn independently and to think critically. And importantly, gain a lot of the communication skills, because you have to communicate your science to various audiences. And in my PhD work, I did a lot of translational science, which was really key as a medical scientist because I always wanted to make sure what I was doing science-wise translated to patients. We click again. I went on to a postdoc at Children's National Medical Center, now called Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C. And I was a study director for a health disparities project that in combination with Howard University. And while I was there, look again, I think one of the key things that I learned was how to be accountable and take ownership for the work that I was doing. Importantly, a lot of problem-solving skills were developed, and specifically the area of work that I worked in health disparities, looking at genetic risk among African American young adults. If you click again. I went on to do a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship in Bethesda, Maryland at the NIH National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute specifically. And after a two-year fellowship, I got the opportunity to do if you click to the next slide, become the director of a nonprofit that was based in Washington, D.C. In Go Global, that was focused on promoting health promotion among young adults. And click one more time. I think one of the key things that I got out of it was the opportunity to learn how to network, build partnerships, practical problem-solving skills. Obviously, because of the policy fellowship and the nonprofit, I learned a lot about health policy and fundraising, and had the opportunity to meet the president of the town, which was super exciting. And then I ultimately transitioned to Regeneron in Tarrytown, New York, into the research program management team, where in the next slide I'll let you know a little bit about exactly what I did. But I think what's critical about where I am now is just the opportunity to lead with science. And the four other things listed in that last bucket of items are principles that our company really strives to achieve. And that's taking on big ideas, making things happen, being great together, doing what's right, ultimately leading with science. And I think that speaks to a lot of the key things that we learned along the way, which I'm now able to put into motion in my current role. If you click to the next slide. So what do I do at Regeneron? So I have a really unique opportunity to support some external collaborations that we have more recently gotten into, which center around some really unique and new drug technologies. So I've just pictured four of them here. One is gene editing through CRISPR-Cas9 technology, where there are small guide RNAs that are used to target genome loci for editing the DNA such that you can create a knockout of the gene and or insert genes into the gene locus. This is really transformative, particularly for genetic diseases that are governed by individually known genes. Also, we have a couple collaborations that involve viral gene therapy, where an AAV virus or a lentivirus is used to introduce DNA to treat either a disease such as Pompe disease, where it's missing an enzyme, and they need to introduce the DNA to produce the enzyme. And it's also used to alter certain cells in the body that we can then change and maneuver and then bring the better copy of this version of the cells back into the patient. Also, small interfering RNA or siRNA is another platform that we use, again, to alter gene expression. And finally, chimeric T-cell receptors, or CAR-Ts, which are a unique approach to attacking cancer cells by targeting them with a souped-up version of targeting cells for a given known cancer cell targets. Really exciting work, and I work with a really great team that makes all of this happen. And Lyndon and Marcus happen to be part of that. So look forward to you learning a little bit about them as well.
All right, thank you, Chi. I hope people were able to hear you. It is kind of hard. I don't know if you had headphones. I would try to put on some headphones for the Q&A session. And so we'll move on with Marcus.
Hi, everyone. This is Marcus Jones. Lyndon, can you hear me well? All right, good to go. So I'm also a part of Research Program Management at Regeneron. We're in the role of Associate Director. Lyndon, can you hit the next one? So I started off, very early on loving science and, physics, math, everything in science, but really didn't know what I wanted to do. And, so the natural progression from high school to college, and hit the next one, Lyndon. I went to Southern University in A&M College, which is a small historically Black college in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where I followed my passion for music, where I marched in the band for 4 years at Southern. But then I also focused in microbiology, getting my bachelor's in microbiology from in 2000. But one of the things that were key in my really embracing science was taking advantage of internships. So one of those key steps was being a part of the Leadership Alliance, which is a network of historically Black colleges and Ivy League and Big Ten schools, will really give students the opportunity to learn about science, being a part of the bench work and really getting your hands deep into the science so that you get that true exposure. And then also through the American Society for Microbiology, which afforded me another opportunity to intern at the University of Texas medical branch in Galveston, which really helped push me along that scientific path to pursue my PhD. Next one. And so after Southern, I went and went to Nyu School of Medicine, where I got my master's and PhD in microbiology. And along the way, I was fortunate to get 2 fellowships. One, the David Lucille Packard Foundation, which gave me upfront, as I entered grad school, a $100,000 scholarship or a fellowship, where I can really pick and choose the lab that I wanted to. But more importantly, it gave me a network of mentoring and mentors that really helped guide me along that path. And then along the way, I also was fortunate to get the UNCF Merck Science Initiative Graduate Fellowship. And that's where I got to meet Chi and Lyndon, who really became lifelong mentors and friends that helped nurture me along that path and kept me out of trouble, but really helped develop that my professional goals and where I am today. And next one, Lyndon. And then after NYU, I went on to do a postdoc and stayed on as a staff scientist and assistant professor at the J. Craig Venter Institute, which is a nonprofit genomic institute, where I stayed there for about 10 years, doing bench research and really staying in genomic and medicine and in the microbiology infectious disease fields. But while I was there, I had the fortune of taking advantage of the Keystone Symposia Fellows Award, which allowed me to get more deep into the science shaping the scientific agenda of a lot of these different fields and helping to plan these meetings and really getting to understand who are the key players in both academia as well as industry, the government, and nonprofits. And then one more, Lyndon. But then I also, as I got promoted to an assistant professor, I really got to see more of academia. I started writing grants, and I got one of my first grants with the DTRA, the Department of Defense Threat Reduction Agency. So I got to fund the research that I wanted to. But being in academia, science took me to a place I never thought I would be able to go, and I actually got to travel to Kenya, where I got to teach a course on RNA-seq and using gene expression technology to understand infectious diseases. And then after 2014, I decided to take a chance, and you never know when chances come. And I was a part of a startup company called Human Longevity. And this was an opportunity to go make that shift from a nonprofit academic to getting more into industry and getting an understanding of the business sides of a startup. But then in 2016, I decided to make another change and go into research program management at Lyndon. And here is where I'm at today, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, where I still have the pleasure and having these lifelong friendships with Chi and Lyndon, where now I get to work with them on a day-to-day basis, supporting the genetics center. But if you click the next one. So at my role at Regeneron, where I'm supporting the RDC, I get to work with fantastic people. And the picture to the right is the members of our team where we're supporting all the aspects of the Genetic Center. And just to give you a little bit of intro for the Regeneron Genetic Center, it's an end-to-end genomics genetic center where we sequence all the samples and do research and discovery to find novel genetic targets to help treat diseases. So part of our role there is to really drive the scientific vision, but really build new genetic resources that support Regeneron's target discovery. And using that knowledge and what we do, we work very closely with a number of the project leads and provide senior management with communication and what's going on in the genetic center. What are those new findings that we're discovering that helps drive our science? But also we serve as champions for establishing and nurturing scientific relationships and teams. And we're really integrated into all aspects of research within Regeneron. But the one thing I want to leave you with is it's extremely important, as I have with Chi and Lyndon and Derek too, is identify mentors and peers to help shape and mold my career. If you hit the next one, Lyndon. And one more time. It really takes a village. And on the left-hand side are institutions that provided me mentoring, but also on the right, throughout my career, and I always go back to these people, they help set the foundation and the shoulders I'm standing on to help build me up to where I am. So what I would say to you is, seek out those mentors that can really motivate you and help you along your path, but then also, take it upon yourself to help others to keep lifting each other up. And that you can go on.
And it's very hard for Marcus to get in trouble, so that was easy to keep him out of trouble. All right, we'll turn it over to Derek Bramble.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Thank you for the opportunity to address you guys today. Thank you, Lyndon, Chi, and Marcus as well for inviting me to be a part of this panel. My name is Derek Bramble. I'm a clinical study lead at Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. Primarily, I run clinical trials, and we'll get into a little bit of that later. Next slide, please, Lyndon. As far as my educational experience, I attended a small HBCU located in Northern Alabama, Oakwood University, where I majored in biology. I was pre-med at the time, but I was kind of going back and forth about becoming a physician. My mentor, who was a surgeon, still is a surgeon, had advised me to truly, do some soul searching and think about what I was pursuing in medicine at that time. So I had an interest in epidemiology, particularly after watching a movie called Outbreak, very old movie, where they tracked Ebola to the US. And I thought it was pretty interesting, pretty cool. So I decided to pursue that in the meantime while I was still figuring out whether or not I wanted to pursue a medical degree. So after leaving Oakwood, I attended New York Medical College in Valhalla, New York, where I majored in epidemiology. While I was interested in infectious diseases at the time, I started to shift my focus more to chronic diseases such as asthma and cardiovascular disease, which is indicated there per my thesis. My advisor at the time worked as an epidemiologist, primarily analyzing data for clinical trials. So as a result, and because of my interest in clinical trials, he started to offer, suggestions as to how I should pursue my career within epidemiology. I was assigned to an independent project where I studied childhood obesity within a small city in Westchester County called New Rochelle, comparing the obesity rates of children in two different neighborhoods, one being primarily focused or geared towards underserved population within that city, and then one on the affluent side of town. The other school being on the affluent side of town. Within that process, what I didn't know at the time was that some of the activities that I did, such as reviewing medical records against the survey, the paper instruments where we collected data, that process is called source document verification. At the time, I didn't realize that would lead me on the career path to what I do now. While I was in graduate school, I also worked part-time, primarily as a chemist, microbiologist in county labs, and I also worked in the peak Pharmaceuticals. As we know, they're the sponsor or pharmaceutical company, that manufactures OxyContin. It was a great experience, but I quickly realized that bench work wasn't ideal for me. In fact, I messed up on an experiment, and the head of the lab called me into his office to have a discussion about my career goals. And he based on what I was talking to him about, he definitely suggested I continue to pursue my career path primarily in operations and running clinical trials. Subsequent to graduating from New York Medical College with my degree, had a funding job as an epidemiologist. Many of the positions were in faraway places. So what occurred was I came across a listing for what was called a clinical data monitor. In the industry, we call it clinical research associate. That position primarily was I would look at clinical data. I would have to visit sites, interact with physicians, nurses, coordinators, all of the site staff at those hospitals, review the data, ensure that safety standards were being met, ensure that the data integrity was correct, along with the fact that any fraudulent activity. Sometimes in clinical studies, people tend to fudge stats a little bit, but there's definitely standards in place to avoid us from having to deal with that. So that led me, and the bonus there was that not only would I get to visit centers across the US, but it allowed me to travel across Canada. I also used to travel to Australia, London, Ireland. So it definitely gave me a great opportunity to experience how clinical studies and how medicine primarily is practiced in different areas around the world. From there, I moved on to a contract research organization called Icon Clinical Research. Sponsors, as we call them on our industry, primarily pharmaceutical companies, may not have a footprint in different regions. So to that end, you have to outsource these activities to what they call contract research organizations. Typically, these companies have footprints in places like Asia and Europe and South America. It allows us to continue to run these trials, but have outsourced these activities and just maintain an oversight of their activities. And it also comes at a cost benefit to the sponsor of pharmaceutical company. I worked at contract research organization for about 3 years or so, and then moved on to the sponsor side, the pharmaceutical side with GE Healthcare. From there, that led my travels led me to Regeneron, where I continued that work as a CRA. But as you can imagine, I traveled quite a bit, and I got tired of it. Opportunity came for me to work on the clinical trial. In fact, it was our pivotal trial for Lyndon, our anti-PD-1 inhibitor within oncology. So I started out as associate manager and worked my way up to where I am now, where I run 2 clinical trials. Next slide, please. So what do I do? A lot of times when people think about clinical research, and especially within pharmaceuticals, there's a research and development side where there's a lot of bench work, preclinical work with animals, and so forth. And then, there's this point in between that no one really thinks about, and we just focus on approval. Well, you don't get approval without coming to me and my team, which is clinical operations. So primarily, in order to get a drug approved, you have to test it out in human subjects. There's a lot of red tape, regulatory standards that are in place, logistics as far as getting drug to various sites, things such as labeling, a lot of different pieces that go into that. And my job is to ensure that all of those pieces fit together and everything is running efficiently. My focus is primarily on first in human studies, which are phase 1. Straightforward, these are the studies that first in human. The first time they're introduced to a patient population, we go through a process called dose escalation, where we are trying to find the recommended phase 2 dose, which is where we test what we do in phase 2 studies. And then from there, if our hypotheses are correct, we then continue expanding on those programs for phase 3 studies. And then from there, hopefully, if we get approval, then we go to phase 4, which is post-marketing. My primary responsibilities, again, are working with vendors that I work with as an employee, contract research organizations, central laboratories. We focus on selection of sites and regions. I interface a lot with medical physicians, not only internally, but also at our external sites as well. And pretty much, as a friend said, I'm a ringmaster in a huge circus. So one thing that I would like to point out is that because of my various opportunities within my career and interfacing with various people, I was able to glean from those experiences and apply it to what I do now. So with that, what's highlighted on the slide here is that there's more than one way to have an impact. You don't necessarily have to be a scientist. If you truly want to be a scientist, then do that. But then there's also varying career paths from being a scientist or a physician. I work with people who are engineers, PhDs, MBAs. So there's definitely more than one way to have an impact within healthcare. With that said, I'll turn it over to Lyndon. Thank you.
And I apologize, Derek, I was waiting for you to tell me to advance the slides, but so I'll just leave this up for just a few minutes so folks could see and visualize what you were saying. But I do like the fact that you are pointing out that there are different ways to have an impact. And I think that is the message of today, is really to find where you, the audience, the students in the crowd here, feel, your superpower is, so that you could then make the biggest difference, positive difference to the world. So find out what you're good at and go and make that impact, as Derek says. So I will introduce myself. I'm Lyndon Mitnaul. I'm also part of Research Program Management, and you see a lot of folks in program management on this panel today because we get to see all of the research within a pharmaceutical company like Regeneron. Like Marcus and Derek, I went to an HBCU. I went to Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina. I was a chemistry major, and like Derek, I wanted to be a doctor, an MD. And I was good at math and science. So when you're good at math and science, people tell you to go to medical school. But while I was at Benedict, I was fortunate to get involved with different research programs, minority-sponsored research programs, like Marcus pointed out. And I did 3 internships. And those internships really were key because it showed me a different career path that I can take if you like math and science, and that was being a research scientist. So I graduated from Benedict and I went to the Hershey Medical Center at Penn State University in Hershey, Pennsylvania, where I got my PhD in biological chemistry. There I studied enzyme kinetics, protein biochemistry. I had mentors, as you see listed here. And one of the things that I wanted to point out about graduate school or even medical school, because I was at the medical center at Hershey, I was able to interact with a lot of medical students, and I took a lot of my courses with medical students, is learn how to think and solve problems whenever you are in a class. That's what you're training your brain to do, is to think and solve problems. It doesn't matter what that problem is. It's really training your brain to solve problems. I then went off after my graduate degree. I went to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee, where I did a postdoc. After graduate school, you typically go to do additional training, and that's called a postdoc. And I did mine in virology and molecular biology, studied influenza pathogenesis, how the flu virus infects and grows and so forth. And so there again, I continued to mold my technical skill sets, but also got to learn how to build even better relations with people, because I was in a different scientific discipline coming out of enzyme kinetics and protein biochemistry into something like influenza virus pathogenesis. So you have to learn how to work not only technically and be good in the laboratory, but you also have to learn how to work with different people. One of my take-home message to you guys today is really try to get exposure, early exposure to different career paths, as I mentioned earlier. Have a strong work ethic. You're going to have to work hard and get, as Marcus said, great mentors to be around you to help build and extend your professional network, because that is so important. And I think that was the differentiation factor for me, because I was able to have good mentors. I worked hard and I got a lot of good early exposure with those internships and throughout my graduate and postdoc career. I then came to Merck after my postdoc, again, having that connection, building those relations, getting that early exposure, because one of my internships in 1987 was at Merck, and in 1997, I got hired by Merck. I was a principal scientist there in the Division of Cardiovascular Diseases, ran a laboratory and programs on looking at targets for lipid biology and thrombosis. I then made a big career change after 15 years at Merck, coming into research program management, because I wanted to expand my my breadth of research opportunities in terms of only looking at cardiovascular disease, but looking more broadly across all of the different disciplines. As Chi was mentioning, with all of the different modalities that are out there now of having drug therapeutics, small molecules, antibodies, CRISPR, siRNA, CAR Ts, and things like that. So this is what research program management does for us. Here I'm a co-lead of the actual program management team, and as Marcus mentioned, we support the Regeneron Genetics Center, and as Chi was mentioning, all of the external research collaborations at Regeneron. And this is our team, our technologies team. The research program management team is about 55 people at Regeneron, and this is our team here. So we have a very diverse team, and we're a very close-knit team that works hard and plays hard. I just wanted to end with telling you a little bit about Regeneron, because you've been hearing us talk about Regeneron and introduce ourselves of working at Regeneron, but you don't maybe know too much about Regeneron. So we're a biopharmaceutical company up in Tarrytown, New York. That's our headquarters, but we do have sites in Ireland, London, and Albany, and New Jersey. We have 7 approved drugs now, but we have a wonderful pipeline that's coming through. 100% of our drugs have been made by Regeneron scientists. So the people walking the hallways have made those 7 drugs, and with the help of folks like Derek in our clinical group. We have about 20 candidates in clinical right now, and that's 20 plus, depends on what day you ask. But a lot of antibody therapeutics, which is our bread and butter modality, but we also have a lot of other therapeutic modalities coming through, like what she was mentioning with CRISPR, Cas9, gene editing, and siRNA therapeutics that are about to start first in human studies. We publish a lot. We're a very academically driven company where we share our science, and we have about 8,000 employees around the world, again, mostly in Tarrytown, New York, and in Albany, New York, where a big manufacturing site is. As Marcus mentioned, we were the first pharmaceutical company to have a genetics center built within the company, and using human genetics to identify new targets and new therapeutic opportunities for patient stratification on drugs and things like that. So it's a very exciting time for genetics, because Mother Nature is the best scientist out there. And as Marcus mentioned, we have sequenced over 1 million individuals across the world and different ethnic backgrounds and demographics. And we're using that information to help drive new discoveries. We are a company who gives back to our community. We really emphasize that. We have a day for doing good that's coming up actually in October this year. And we put in a lot of hours where the company shuts down for the day, and we go out into the community and do something good for the community. And they have programs built around this, so you plan it well in advance and go into the community and do good for the community, not only for one day, but that is the dedicated day for Day for Doing Good. And our employees are happy. We've been #1 in the Science magazine survey for pharmaceutical companies. We've been #1, I think, 6 of the last 9 years, and in those other 3 years, I think we've been #2. So we're very happy to see that. And then last, since we are talking to a lot of students, I just wanted to tell you that we have a lot of training and mentorship programs that you should hear about and read about more. Students participate in a lot of mentorship programs like our DNA Learning Center. We have the Student Talent Search, which is an awesome program, Science to Medicine program, and high school mentorship programs that are in the area high schools of Regeneron. We do have internship programs, so those positions are posted already on our website. So you can go to our website and apply just like if you apply for a job. And again, use your professional network, and 4 people now here at Regeneron you should reach out to us if needed, and we can help guide you along. But each year we have about 300 students that participate in these programs across the company, as well as the company sites, as well as in all areas of the company, not only within our science, but in our legal department, our business department, our manufacturing engineering departments. And we do panels and conferences like this. Patients Are Waiting, Abercams, NSB. We do campus recruiting. We do HBCU recruiting, and other panel sessions where needed. We participate in a lot of those things. And we have a postdoc program. About 15 graduate students a year come into our program. And again, it's a wonderful program because not only do you get a great experience in learning about pharmaceutical research, but you have an opportunity to get hired. A lot of folks from our postdoc program get hired into Regeneron. So I'll end there, and I will just wanted to give a special thanks to the Patients Are Waiting organizers and Dr. Cherise Hamblin for founding this organization. I think it's so important, as I mentioned in my introductions of myself, of how early exposure is so important to helping you find where you can make a difference. So with that, I am going to go out of screen so I can see folks and see the chat and see if there are any questions. I think we have a few minutes for questions. And should we look and see, are there questions? If there are questions, I would say just type them in. Okay, there you go. All right, folks are out there. Was this helpful? Do you have, okay, that's us. Great ways to break research or how to approach a PI. I've been talking, does anybody want to take that one? Do you all have any suggestions for great ways to break into research or how to approach a principal investigator?
What I would say is,
Yeah, I think there's usually, I remember back in my day, it might be a little different now, there were binders full of summer research internships. Now it's probably all online. But definitely look into research, summer research internship opportunities. There's a lot of them out there, and usually your career center at the college will have that. Also, professors do not mind if you come to them, particularly if you've done well in a class or you've created some sort of a connection with one of your professors in sciences, and come to them with the question, how can I get into a lab? I'd love to do some basic science research if your campus, if you have a research campus. There's also programs for high school students as well. I find more and more students are having high school experiences depending on where you live. I know, for example, if you're in Maryland, the NIH has a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of intern opportunities, particularly for the summer, that folks should look into. I'm just not familiar with where they're all housed these days, but definitely career centers, both at high school and guidance counselors at high schools, as well as career centers at the colleges that you attend.
Yeah, I'm going to take the rogue approach. Chi took the professional way. I'm going to take the non-professional way, or it's still professional. But I think what you could do is, scientists love to talk about their work. So if you want to work in someone's lab, read one of their papers, okay? Study the paper, and then email them and say, hey, I read your paper that you published last year. Can I, talk to you about the paper? I had some questions about it. It's a really wonderful paper, but I had some questions. They will love that. They want to talk to people about their science. And then you get on the phone with them and you're talking science with them. They're going to be like, hey, what are you doing? You're an undergrad or a high school student, and you're reading my paper, and you ask these really good questions. Would you like an internship, or are you familiar with our internship program? Are you familiar with our graduate program? So that's another way. Use science to get into the lab. That's how you can break in, I think. Good question, Carissa. gonna add something, Marcus? I didn't know.
No, I was just going to say other opportunities. There's look at, so as Lyndon mentioned, Regeneron, we have 300. I am? Shouldn't be. Can you hear me?
You good? Yeah.
Oh, so as Lyndon mentioned,
She was
Regeneron.
trying to tell you to mute.
Ah, thank you, Chi. I appreciate it. But in addition, so Regeneron, we have 300 internships a year. But look at other pharmaceutical companies. They have similar internship programs where they'll bring students in. Look at the government. There's many different intern opportunities there. And then look at organizations like I mentioned, like the Leadership Alliance. Those organizations are built to help students get into research and get connected with folks. So like Lyndon said, it doesn't hurt to cold call a PI and say, I loved your paper. Can I come work in your lab? That's how I got my postdoc. I literally said, hey, you did some great work. Do you have an open position? And he said, let's do it. So don't be shy.
Yeah, and I know this is more medical focused students that are probably in the audience today. Don't forget about research, because as she mentioned in her career path, research will even help your medical path. It's going to help you become an even better medical physician, one, and it's going to help you in your medical school application. If somebody sees that you've been doing some internships in the laboratory, that's going to help you get into medical school, okay? Because you're going to understand the basic science, and they want people who understand the basic science who can now translate that basic science into the clinic. So do the internships. I mean, shadowing is fine. I'm not trying to get away from shadowing a physician during the summer, but don't do 3 summers like that. Get in 2 summers in the laboratory, get that basic science, and I'm going to tell you that's going to strengthen your medical school application and just make you a better physician. All right. Other questions? We have a quiet crowd. All right. Since we're not getting questions, I will ask questions of our panel and say, if you were sitting on the other side today, what kind of questions would you be asking, or what kind of advice would you be giving to yourself, knowing what you know now?
Eric?
For me at least, definitely be. I would have been a lot more proactive. I think that I was a bit passive in my younger years, even though I had the aptitude, ability to do the work. And it actually took some urging from my mentors and advisors to proceed. So definitely take advantage of those opportunities, and I think like Lyndon said, create those opportunities. I laughed when he said that scientists like to talk about their work, and it's very, very true. Even now in my position, I pull the scientists that I work with to the side, and they'll go to the whiteboard, and we'll spend about an hour breaking down a protocol. So it's definitely something that's very helpful, and it actually, teaches you having that interaction early is something that you can carry with you throughout your career. So that's something I would say. Just be proactive. It doesn't hurt to ask. The worst that will happen is that they say no, and there's always someone else who will say yes and definitely help you along with your career.
All right.
Just a question.
You want to? Yeah, I was going to say, you want to take that one?
Do you have any advice for any MD PhD students? And so specifically for students who are currently pursuing an MD PhD, stay the course. That's the first piece of advice. It's a long road. I did my training at Duke, and we had 1 year of coursework and then 1 year of clinical, and then went into the PhD. So I kind of gained a year or so in that way. But otherwise, it's at least an 8-year to sometimes 10 or more year road. So definitely just encouraging words to start off with. Secondly, I would say that the two sides of training can be similar but very different. And I would definitely, the way to approach is to look at it as either one informing the other. My PhD, the lab that I chose for my PhD had a lot to do with being able to do translational science, which I had gained a full appreciation for after being on the wards and seeing patients. So, while you're doing your training, it's okay to try and see how you can merge the two worlds and not necessarily just be in one or the other. As Lyndon said, physicians who understand research are really critical to the field, and likewise, scientists who understand how medicine works are also very critical. So definitely look for ways that you can merge the two during your training. And then lastly, I would say, I think I came out of my PhD a way more confident medical student than I was when I went in. So use the extra years. It's a long road, but it gives you a lot of time to learn yourself. And I think usually with medical school, it's 4 years. And by your second and a half year, you actually kind of have to make some decisions about what you want to do for the rest of your career. And that's kind of tough because you don't get full exposure to all of the different disciplines. But if you're doing a combined degree program, you do get extra time while you're studying for the other degree to really sort out what you really are drawn to and really think you are good at and can do either in medicine and in addition to, research. So I would say look at the long years of training as a benefit in that way, that when you come out of it, you're going to be doing exactly what you feel comfortable, confident, and built to do.
Great. Good question.
And that would conclude the panel as a whole. If you all want to continue speaking, that's totally fine. I just wanted to let you guys know where the timestamp was at. This was very informative. I'm not even in medicine, and I learned a lot. So thank you so much for your time. And if anyone has any questions or would like to reach out to the panelists, if the panelists want, you can put your contact and people can contact you through that. But otherwise, I hope everyone stays safe and healthy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Yeah, I had one comment and one question. One comment is we have a booth later today from 2 to 4. So if students would like to join our booth and ask more questions there, we can do that. And then my question is, Chi, did you really read all those books behind you? Or is that just for show? I think it's just for show.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
All
fellow
right.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
panelists.